Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program. Why Can't I Just Google It, which is sponsored by CloudSource from CRC Dynex. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. I'll just put a couple links in the chat to where you can view previous webinars or sign up for upcoming webinars. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. Next slide. Cool. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speaker or to share any comments. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. We do anticipate many questions, so if we don't get to yours, we apologize in advance for that, but we'll do our best to answer as many questions we have time for. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like or would like to be addressed. Next slide. Also, there is closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom right corner of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and where to access the slides. And with that, we're ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Mariska.
Right. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your valuable busy days to attend this webinar. Why Can't I Just Google It? I'm Mariska Conley. I'm the CloudSource Director of Partnerships and Communications here at CRC Dynex, which means I work a lot with our content partners and with our customers so that we have a better understanding of your needs and where we fit in the landscape of library software and services. I'm a former academic librarian and have worked in systems, e-resources, and done some instruction for both academic and medical libraries, just to give you an idea of my background. If we want to talk about the problematic aspects of using Google as a primary search platform, which many people do, it's helpful to look back and see why people do research in the first place. This is obviously not an exhaustive list, but just some common motivations. What are our researchers trying to accomplish? The basic categories include things like answering a question, proving or even disproving a hypothesis, either formally or informally, evaluating information received through other sources, or maybe going deeper on a topic, and also to generate more questions. Sometimes you don't yet know what you don't know. But really, why do people do research? What do they think they're doing when they open their browser? To complete a task. And this is anything from researching a political candidate to a recipe for a gluten-free sourdough starter, to completing a 10-page paper, double-spaced, of course, on the causes of the American Revolution. All of those can be reasons that they are doing research. To influence others. Do you want to win that argument with your Uncle Dan at the next family reunion, or provide evidence that your revolutionary new treatment works in a lab setting? To resist the influence of others. Again, do you want to win that argument with Uncle Dan? You get the idea. To advance social standing. And this category includes job advancement, education, your impact factors in the academic scholarship world, or just impressing your friends at the bar. And finally, satisfying curiosity. The seeking of knowledge can be fulfilling all by itself. Many of us have gone down rabbit holes when something tickles our interest. Now we've got a why. Let's talk about how research tools and sources differ. When at home or in your car or in the coffee shop, since we all have a computer in our pockets, you might use search engines such as Google, which is an extremely common one to find information. Sometimes we go right to a source we trust. Books, encyclopedias, Wikipedia, there's some overlap here with the known websites category. the news, podcasts, political commentators, NPR website. Social media is both a vessel for information seeking, but also disseminating both factual information and commentary, and seeking information from people you trust or who are more knowledgeable in an area. Research looks different at the library or at your educational institution, as you know. We've got the OPAC to search the holdings that relate to your research, your discovery platform and whatever sources that they index, your A to Z list or subject list, expert assistance in the form of a reference interview or guidance from a faculty member, LibGuides and research starters of all kinds. Surprising no one, it's not uncommon to see a student pull up Google in the library. I have walked down many a computer aisle and closed out Google search boxes when they're done. And of course, browsing, encompassing both your cultivated browsing, such as topical displays, and also your savvy patrons who know exactly where their topic can be found in the stacks. So let's do a quick poll question to warm things up. What was the last reason that you conducted research? And if not for you personally, then the last time you helped a library patron. This could be to complete a task, so a research paper, a project, instructions, to influence others, to resist the influence of others, to advance social standing, or to just satisfy curiosity. Which one of those seems like something you have done recently? I know we don't typically think of it in these terms, but it can be helpful to kind of break it down to that level. All right, let's see what we've got result-wise. To complete a task, that doesn't surprise me at all, considering I'm talking to a lot of academics and academic librarians, especially when we're helping patrons. A lot of times they do come in and they've got a very specific thing. And again, to satisfy curiosity, not surprising from librarians. I quite enjoy that. That is how I spend my Friday nights far too often. All right, so the thing is, you can absolutely find high quality, free information on the internet. Lack of sources isn't typically the problem when it comes to doing research on Google. So let's take a moment to talk about open access, just to get an idea of the types of scholarly content that you hope your patrons find when they're Googling. So there's a lot of it out there. Over 63 million scholarly resources are open access, including articles, books, data sets. Over 50 million of those are scholarly articles. 61% of all scholarly articles published since 2017, so like the last 8 years, are OA. And 3.7 million open articles were published in 2023 alone, making 67% of the scholarly articles published in 2023 freely available. So those are all things your users could potentially find, but only 16% of it's indexed in the directory of open access journals. This is important just to note because a lot of librarians will turn on DOAJ as a search source in their discovery layer and think they've got OA pretty much covered, and that's not the case because you're missing out on a lot of that content. The graph on the right here illuminates an anticipated shift in scholarly communication by 2024, where nearly 100% of peer-reviewed articles are expected to adopt some type of OA licensing. The primary driver behind this trend lies with funder mandates. Granting agencies are requiring OA publication models. Entities such as the National Institutes of Health, all federal government agencies support research that stipulates this particular condition. The European Commission has similar expectations, so it's not just the US. And the Nelson memo that was issued by the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy in August of 2022, I believe, requires that OA publishing must be done for all federally funded grant funding, and it should be made publicly available without delay or embargo by the end of next year. And that's the big change. A lot of federal funded research already required that it be published in OA, but you had often a year embargo, and that will be gone as of next year. Private organizations are also influencing the research landscape, including the Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust. They have similarly committed to the OA cause, and researchers seeking their support are often obligated to publish their findings under an OA license, reinforcing a collective commitment to unrestricted access to scholarly output. All of these factors are shaping the future of research content on a global scale. What we see when we look at the top ranked journals is that they have very high OA publication rates. These are the top multidisciplinary journals as of February, ranked by Cimego. Most of them are more than half OA, and many are just approaching or have already become fully open access. We see this discipline by discipline. The higher the rank of the journal in that discipline, the more likely it is to have a high OA access publication rate. And the largest publishers of open access content are the same publishers that have historically published the bulk of scholarly content that we're used to. They have high editorial standards and they've not lowered them for OA. These journals publishers will always want to publish the best authors with the most interesting research, who are the folks who are getting grant funding a lot of the time. Most of them are not pure OA journals. They are what we call hybrid. These journals have made room for OA articles in their traditional subscription models. They reside right next to articles that require access through a paid subscription, which means we would need a subscription to access any or all of it in many cases, which is doubly insulting considering we're often paying article publishing charges to get that information in there in the first place. So just to reiterate, about 80% of open access content exists in these hybrid journals. And although OA started with the STEM fields, it includes access to all subject areas these days. It's important to note that we're seeing rapid growth with humanities and social sciences, and the open access movement has gained momentum in recent years, with more researchers, institution publishers, and funders recognizing the benefits of making their work freely available to the public. There are challenges in the open access landscape, which will relate a little bit to our Google discussion here. For one thing, navigating through various platforms makes discovering open access resources challenging. OA data is often unorganized and scattered across the publishing landscape, and often doesn't come up in discovery layers unless you subscribe to that content. So if you try to Google these resources, you'll also find them buried in vast amounts of information online, which makes it harder to find if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. If you know the issue in the journal article name, you can find it no problem. But if you're just looking for general research, it gets very, very tricky. Even if they can find it, how can the general public access this really available information without that paid subscription clearance? Libraries exist to level the information playing field, but because OA and OER resources are often behind paywalls or difficult to expose, our patrons turn to services like Google Scholar to find them. And there's a lot of misunderstandings around OA. We talked about this already, but open access articles are peer-reviewed and high quality, and the vast majority of them are not in the Gold and Diamond DOAJ journals. So let's talk about Google now. Google is so synonymous with information seeking that sending a friend a link to "let me Google this" has become kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of telling someone to take the initiative to research something themselves. While independent information seeking is an admirable trait, the potential pitfalls with using Google as your go-to is obvious to any educator or librarian. But you just have to look at the usage to see how prevalent Google is. Let's start with the pros of this search engine. I want to give Google a fair deal here. Google remains the leading search engine worldwide with a whopping 80% of the market share over just the last 12 months. And this stays pretty consistent. It is available to everyone with an internet connection, so publicly available. It at least appears to offer open access to information. There's a staggering amount of information on every topic imaginable. There aren't complicated query builders or filters that you have to learn or mess with. No logins, at least until you hit a paywall. And Google Scholar contains a lot of academic records, though that paywall does come up a lot more often. Well, all that sounds great. So why not use Google? Well, dead-end results. A lot of what you find on Google and Google Scholar isn't going to lead to high-quality full-text resources or articles. And it isn't always what the description tells you it is. Metadata can be outdated, incorrect, or even falsified. And there's so many results with little curation that it can actually be really hard to find what you're looking for. When initiating a search, while initiating search isn't complicated. Natural language with few limiters and difficult to understand advanced search syntax is only going to get you so far, especially with that volume of records. How many of your users know that you can put a minus, then a word to exclude those results, or :domain will help you limit to a particular website or type of website? It's just not an intuitive process. Information on Google is hard to vet for accuracy and reliability. It's not academic by default. And Google Scholar has to be taken with a healthy dose of skepticism as well. A 2019 article in Cytometrics looked at academic search engines and bibliographical databases. So they included the four big multidisciplinary databases, EBSCOhost, ProQuest, Scopus, and Web of Science, as well as publicly available search engines like Microsoft Academic, which was retired a couple of years later, Semantic Scholar, and of course, Google Scholar. They determined that Google Scholar's size was often underestimated, and the number of query hits was as much as 55% higher than other search engines. However, they lack transparency and consistency. Google Scholar has an unrivaled amount of data, but it's a black box, and that behavior hasn't changed. In fact, despite the emphasis put on Google Scholar citations at a lot of academic and research institutions, a study in Archive published in February of just this year examined methods for artificially inflating citation counts, including a citation boosting service that authors could use. Since Google Scholar algorithms heavily look at these citations in their relevancy listings, it's easy to imagine how the whole search engine is compromised just on that one point alone, the fact that you can influence these citations. In grabbing this screenshot of Google Scholar's landing page, the algorithms kind of accidentally made one of my points for me. Google Scholar knows my research interests and suggested an article. I'm sure you've all had that happen. But clicking on it took me immediately to a paywall and a moment of frustration, a feeling that many of our users probably know well if they rely too much on Google or Google Scholar. So let's look at what we know about information-seeking behaviors in teens and young people, since a lot of those age ranges are what we have coming into colleges and universities. Though much of these concepts can apply to non-traditional students and patrons of all walks of life as well. Google isn't just the first point of research for many inexperienced students. It's the only one that they feel comfortable using. With shrinking educational budgets and a focus on outcomes, library instruction often falls by the wayside. I found LibGuide after LibGuide instructing students on tips and tricks for using Google more effectively. The fact is that library profession recognizes that they're using this search platform already. And for our non-traditional researchers, those who might not have grown up with digital resources or have gone beyond a secondary education, Google is familiar and safe. A bit of public information about Google. Their search algorithm is not transparent. Google cites the reason being that spammers took advantage of a paper published in PageRank in 1999 explaining how their search algorithm worked. But there's entire industries built around how to maximize your visibility in Google search results. So we do know a lot about it. They use crawlers to automatically visit websites and to follow links to add them to Google Scholar's index rather than curating the content the way a librarian would. They do not have a process. They do rather have a process for managing spam, but it's not a smart system. And what it mostly is looking for for things like papers trying to use tricks, like repeating a keyword over and over to make it to the top of search results. They don't verify the accuracy of any of that information. They're just looking for how they're gaming the system. You can, of course, bypass the crawlers and search algorithms and get your papers pushed right to the top, your papers or your websites for that matter, pushed right to the top if you have the funds to buy ad space and know how to work the algorithm to your benefit. So let's run a quick Google search just as a baseline to talk in our conversation here. And I'm assuming a fairly novice researcher at this point, so I'm not going to even attempt anything really complicated and just use information-seeking behaviors in students just as a free search. You can see that I'm immediately prompted to go to Google Scholar. It does recognize that I'm doing research. There are very few ways to limit to particular types of content. I can go to a couple of formats. I can limit to library science, but my filters here really pertain to commerce, travel, finance. There's really nothing academic in here that is particularly useful. I do have a couple of very basic tools. I can look at just verbatim search results and a little bit of time frame limitations here. So I'm going to limit to the past year just to give me some more relevant information. This Springer link one here at the top is very prominent. I've got a preview on that, which makes me wonder about ads there. And I've got some, at a glance, pretty decent stuff here. I do have a LinkedIn one, but I've also got, ResearchGate and IOP Science, and this looks like a repository on the first one here for analyzing information-seeking behavior. So let me take a look at that. And this one is a go. It looks like a reputable source. I can download the article. So that one is helpful. And let's look at the Springer link one here. And this is what you're going to encounter a lot when you're using Google. If you can find something reputable, you're going to have often these paywalls or prompts to log into your institution. So it's really a guessing game. You have to click on things to find out how useful it's going to be. As with the Google search engine we just looked at, Google Scholar is a bit vague on relevancy ranking, describing the process as weighing the full text of each document, where it was published, who it was written by, as well as how often and how recently it has been cited in other scholarly literature. And we definitely see that the citations weigh heavily. But the content is generally scholarly, so that's a big plus. They're transparent about things like citations, although we know that can be influenced from that study I was just mentioning, publication information, authors. We know where to find the source. Generally, we'll get a publisher page or a URL. And there's information about the contributors and authors. Authors do have a lot of control over their pages, including making them private or editing incorrect citations. Google Scholar profiles can be actually quite a serious business in some fields. So let's run that Google Scholar search just as a comparison. And we'll use the same criteria, but I'm going to assume if someone's going to Google Scholar, they might be a little bit more savvy. So we'll at least put information-seeking behavior in quotations here. And right away, you can see that we do, in this case, have a few limiters, but again, they're very limited. We can look at date ranges, we can sort by relevance or by date. And on the relevance, you're going to get a lot of old articles. I see a 2008 in here, a 2014, because they've been cited more. They're going to come up first. So I'm going to go ahead and sort by date and take a look at what I've got here. I can, of course, save these if I'm logged into my profile. I do have some basic citation tools. There's not a whole lot of customization you can do here, but it covers the 5 basic ones. I can open related articles. So if I find something useful, although I'm not quite sure how it decides what's related. And then here I've got a PDF and an HTML. When I was using this as a student myself, I would look for these PDF links on the side because 9 times out of 10, at least those would be full text, even if they aren't always. And this one, of course, that I'm trying, the first one, does allow me to download a PDF that is, as it turns out, you can see here, it's open access. Of course, there's no way to limit to open access. So I don't know that till I take a look at it. The second one here, turns out to be a presentation, and it's just the abstract of the presentation. So probably of considerably less usefulness here. Let's scroll down and look at a couple more. This one is information seeking behavior of Nigerian students. That comes out of, I think that's the 6th position there from 2023, so fairly recent. And this one might trip up your students here. Most of it's in English, but it's kind of unclear if this is a paid article, if it's open, if it's not, or whether they'd be able to read it. So again, you have to click on things to find out, which makes it, it looks like it can download a PDF here, which makes it a little more complicated. And then this one here, we've got something from, oh, and here we go with the cookies, and I will talk about tracking later. So I will every time turn off all the unnecessary ones if I possibly can. And this one here, it's not immediately access how to see a full text, but I do see this Explore ProQuest over here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and see what I get. And here we go. I am prompted to log in through my institution. So Doing a search in Google Scholar is a little bit more satisfying, but still can lead to a lot of time spent looking to see if something really is open, if it's really available, or if I'm going to have to pay for access. So it's easy to dismiss Google as simply ineffective as a research tool, but a better understanding of how it works with and against users can help it serve you and not the other way around. So at its core, we're going to back up here and talk about search algorithms, which is just a set of instructions that determines how a results list is generated, what's going to be included in it, and how it's going to be ranked. What's considered are usually elements from the metadata or full text of a website or document, things like keywords, dates of publication, number of citations, controlled vocabulary like subject headings, which of course you're not going to find that as much on Google, but you get that in your library resources. And, the format could also be considered, as well as a number of other criteria. We already know Google Scholar's algorithm looks at keywords, dates of publication, and the number of citations because they tell us that. But we can understand a lot more about how Google functions from looking at how it treats different types of searches. So it's no secret when it comes to Google and other tech companies that provide free services that you are the product. By that, I mean information about your behaviors, your interests, the demographics you belong to, your income level, your shopping habits, your searching habits. All of these things can and are monetized ultimately to connect you with goods and services that you might purchase, since that's how they make their money. Along the way, you're training your browser via cookies and tracking data to know what you like to see and read. You see this on Facebook and Instagram too, for example, when the people and pages you visit most often are usually offered at the top of your feed. That kind of self-curation happens on a larger scale when you use the same browser or Google account every day to engage in all of your day-to-day information seeking. The result of this process is that you end up in filter bubbles, wherein the things you see are heavily influenced by what you've interacted with in the past. This can lead to baked in biases in your results. If you're interested in sustainable energy, you might see a lot more ads for solar panels or electric cars. This can be problematic, however, when you go down a conspiracy theory route or you end up with search results pages full of unreliable news sources that Google thinks you want to see. Your choice in keywords used to conduct a Google search also matter greatly. They do in most search platforms, but controlled vocabulary, subject headings, etc., go a long way to mitigating this, as does the fact that libraries cultivate resources. So you're getting scholarly databases in your discovery platforms, in your OPAC. Google, however, is wide open when it comes to content creation, and metadata standards are few and far between. So here's an example of two side-by-side searches and their top results. In both examples, I want to find information about the voting rights of people in Virginia, where I live, who are non-citizens. But I'm approaching it from two very different perspectives. In the first example, I'm using keywords like voter registration laws and non-citizen, and the results reflect largely a factual, authoritative set of results, including 3 hits from the Department of Elections referencing official guidelines and a legal code of Virginia with the relevant passages. I have 1 Heritage Foundation hit, which is a well-known conservative think tank, but otherwise my results are fairly neutral. If I use keywords such as illegal immigrant and voter fraud, I get a completely different, much more reactionary and biased set of search results. I still get the Code of Virginia law, but here it serves to underscore the scare tactics and cherry-picked information pushed from some of these sources. There might be some factual information among these results, but it will come with a clear political leaning and message. And that's just from using slightly different terms to look for this same information. This is just a mild example, and researchers in a variety of disciplines, from ethnographers to information scientists, have run similar experiments around the use of language. Without standardized vocabulary and vetted sources, language choice combined with information harvesting can quickly trap your researchers in a bubble of limited and misleading information. When it comes to filter bubbles and the fact that your activity on the internet is tracked, Your information, or rather information about you and your behaviors, is worth a lot of money. Getting the right ad in front of the right person is valuable. Unsurprisingly, the bulk of Google's profits comes from advertising revenue. I took this from the 2024 first quarter earnings report from Alphabet Inc. That's the holding company that owns Google, YouTube, Android, Chrome, and a bunch of related products and services. The orange web in this chart, orange wedge rather, is the collective Google advertising revenue from sources such as Google Search, YouTube ads, and Google Network, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's an impressive percentage of their revenue at 76%. And straight from the Google Ads help site is an article explaining that Google network, where ads can be shown to a target demographic across their the websites that they use. And this includes everything from maps to search results to partnered sites. Advertising dollars are the lifeblood of Google. This little blinking shoe ad here in the corner of my browser right now came from a pair of heels I looked at like 2 months ago, but they definitely know what we're up to online, and they're happy to monetize that information and sell it to people who will try and sell us other services. I want to talk about one more feature of Google searches that is having an increasing impact on our library users. Google indicated in that same press release about their Q1 financials that they intended to consolidate their AI teams and further accelerate their progress in AI, which is fine, of course. There's a lot of valid uses for AI. We use some AI tools ourselves on the CloudSource product, but the way that the AI has functioned in Google search results has led to some very questionable results. Among them, the suggestion to use Elmer's glue to keep cheese on pizza. That came up in that AI overview. The claim that Barack Obama was the first Muslim president. How many rocks a geologist suggests you eat in a day, which is one small rock a day, by the way. And this list of health benefits associated with giving wine to children that I pulled just last night. The off-the-wall AI overview results that have been shared since it was rolled out earlier this year, I think it was March, ranged from hilarious to potentially dangerous. To their credit, Google is pulling or correcting AI results that are harmful or downright wrong when they've been informed about them. But AI, at this time at least, doesn't have the ability to critically evaluate information the way a person, especially a librarian, researcher, or educator can. With the sheer volume of content on the internet and the fact that it increases on a daily basis, I think we'll continue to see fake news, conspiracies, satire, jokes presented as fact by Google's AI overview for a while yet. It just doesn't know the difference. So Google or even Google Scholar aren't the only ways to find open access information. If you want to provide access to all of those OA and OER resources, especially all the hybrid content not indexed in the DOAJ, there are much better tools for the job. So CloudSource is a full e-resource discovery platform from Cersei Dynamics that leverages open access content from options to include your licensed and on-demand content in the single discovery experience. It's part of the Blue Cloud Library Services Platform, LSP. It brings you comprehensive aggregation, enrichment, management, and discovery of all e-resources for all library types. And it works with all ILS and discovery platforms, so you don't have to be a Cersei Dynamics ILS customer now or in the future to benefit from it. So there are two possible CloudSource setups, and I will get to show you a demo in a moment. First, we have CloudSource OA, where you have access to 60 million plus open access articles, proceedings, reports, including ebooks and e-textbooks, and open educational resources from over 100,000 publishers. So there's a lot of OA and OER available right now, and as I mentioned before, it's growing fast. And with CloudSource Plus, it expands the index and allows you to add your license subscription content, on-demand fulfillment services, and that comes out to be about 1 billion resources available. It covers various types of digital content, from your scholarly licensed content, your magazine and trade journals, your licensed books and ebooks, and your multimedia formats like video and audio and other interactive learning and teaching content, plus news sources such as newswires, newsletters, and newspapers. And CloudSource features a suite of smart tools that expands the metadata and adds all the data you see here to make for a more robust and better discovery experience. We're not just passing along the metadata that gets passed to us, we're also enriching it. We've built a platform that uses sophisticated APIs and other tools to pull in information, find the best metadata, and build a master record that gets indexed as part of our discovery. Oops. So we've looked at Google, we've looked at Google Scholar. Let's take a look at CloudSource OA. I'm going to go ahead and look for students and information seeking behavior. This is the same search I used in Google Scholar, but I've got, if I want to, more robust Boolean operators that your patrons may not necessarily know how to use, but you do, and we do have an advanced search builder that'll help them do this. But this is the same Google Scholar search. And I am going to see what turns up in here. And this CloudSource OA is all OA content, so it's always going to be one-click access. They're not going to run into paywalls or dead ends. We have the option to search within our search results here. So for example, I'm looking at students and information seeking behavior. If I wanted to add a term like Google to just look at articles only pertaining to that particular topic, I can very easily do that and just limit within this search in real time. Let's take that out because I want to give us a little bit more to work with here. So right away, you can see one of the differences is that we have a lot of options as far as ways to filter. So I can go down to just journal articles and not get, a presentation abstract like I did in the Google Scholar search results. And there's a lot of them. And depending on what you're searching for, you can get less or more, and of course, can customize that for your own users. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and limit, I think, to peer-reviewed. Again, you can't do that in Google Scholar or Google. And I'm going to look at the journal article format. So I can take all of these results and do a lot with them, email them. I can take the search results page URL here, and I can plug that right into a LibGuide. So if I wanted to start my students out with something, I could do that. Full view results resource will always take you to a full text. In this case, we've got full text on that first article. You can see a lot of information about the resource at a glance. So it's open access, it's peer reviewed. Here are the Creative Commons license, any citations. Some of them have even got social media buzz, which can include news articles, things on X or Twitter, and if it's been talked about on the internet. I can go to the publisher page, I can export the citation. I've got a lot of options for how I might share this information, including support for browsing. So if you use that, and if you look at our citation tools, which have thousands, I think we're up to something like almost 2,000 options and variations here, including adding your own citation guide. You have a lot of choice as to what you offer here. You can also annotate in real time, so I can leave myself a note. I can format the citation before I export it. In this case, it helps if I actually keep it targeted here. I can italicize. I can add a hyperlink to the DOI page for this, and I can export it to Mendeley or Zotero. I can copy it and put it in a paper. And there's that browsing support I mentioned as well, if that's something that you use at your library, which I know is very popular with some of the faculty I've worked with in the past because they like to look and see what is published in an issue next to the articles they're looking at. So you've got a lot more options here. And if we look at the detailed view, you can see where a lot of that metadata enhancement helps with fields of study and subject headings. All of our quick links here are available. You can see exactly where things are coming from. We're very transparent about that. Your author and institutional affiliations. And I love the published with, referenced, and citation lists because you can take anything in these lists and open them in another browser by themselves. So one of the first things a lot of researchers will do is look at the references in a paper and want to open those up and look at those. And you can do that with one click as long as they're OA. And here we've got, again, that references list I just mentioned. And if you're using CloudSource Plus, and that's also a resource you have, you'll also see those in that list there too. big difference with what you can see in Google Scholar versus the options that you have looking for some of that same quality scholarly content that's readily available. Let's go ahead and also take a moment to look at OER, since OER is beneficial to students and educators at all levels. More and more textbook content is being published each year, and more academic institutions are incentivizing faculty to incorporate OA into their syllabus, or a lot of open textbook initiatives, for example, are designed to help students who might struggle with the cost of textbooks. Since it's so very common for, statistically looking at a lot of the spending of college students for people just to simply make do without a textbook. So there's a big push towards that. CloudSource OA index includes those ebooks, e-textbooks, and also a lot of other learning resources from reliable sources that you will see down here, like MIT Press and OER Commons, Open Textbook Library, AOpen. Let's go ahead and look for just social media literacy here. Very often you'll see these OER material type filters, and that is, I think, very unique to this platform here, that lets you pick things like course level, primary user. Let's go ahead and take community college and high school. We'll assume freshmen, for example, might want this textbook, include those. And then, if I wanted to look for materials specifically for, a tutor or professor or student, I can do that. Let's look for textbooks only. And we're assuming that perhaps we're looking for a textbook for a course that's starting in the fall. I've got some pretty good results in here on this topic. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of these here. We've got the option to view resource, which of course you see earlier. And one of the things that I really like about the open textbooks is very often you've got different ways that you can utilize this resource. So I can read the book online, including going to a particular chapter or linking to a chapter. I can also download the book in a variety of formats, including just a standard PDF that you might want to plug into a course pack, or also, formats that I can use with a Kindle or another e-reader. So it gives some options to both your faculty who might want to incorporate one of these books, and also to your researchers and students who might want to use them. So how do search results stack up between Google Scholar and CloudSource OA? I did this very straightforward search on social media literacy this morning without any filters. Not that Google Scholar has that many that I could use, and I just left it at default relevancy ranking. So a few things to point out. The CloudSource OA results feature more recent scholarship, for one thing. These are 2003, 2004. They are definitely taking into account how recent the scholarship is, as well as the keywords that I was using there. They're all OA, so of course they're available with no click, no login, no authentication required. And one of the nice things that I didn't mention earlier, if you're offering CloudSource OA resources, is because they don't require someone to have a college login, you can share them with your alumni, you can share them with your community users. If you have high school students that come up to your university and want to use some of your resources, they can be pointed towards CloudSource OA and use that as well. So it does broaden the base that you can offer this added value to. All of those, of course, are OA. Of the 3 Google Scholar results, 3 of them are OA, and 2 of them I immediately hit a paywall, $32, $53 to download a copy of these. And I will also point out that the dates are a little more all over the place. There's a 2017 in here, there is a 2004, but again, you see the influence somewhat of the number of citations as to pushing things up to the top here. So you've got a kind of a mixed bag here on what your researchers would find as they come in to do a search in Google Scholar versus CloudSource OA. So just a couple of takeaways as we sort of wrap things up here and go to our Q&A. Google's really tempting. It's easy to use. The amount of information available can be really seductive, and the fact of the matter is there's better ways to provide access to the best parts of the internet. If you're relying on Google as a primary source of information, know that you are the product here. You are what they're using to pay for the services you're using. Every click or interaction is training that search algorithm to feed you information that it thinks that you want. Incognito mode does help, but it's kind of hard to get neutral search results. Unlike CloudSource OA, which includes only vetted OA and journals indexed in Crossref, anyone can put an article or resource on the internet and present themselves as scholarly. The average patron will struggle to know what to trust. Even Google Scholar, that provides HTML and PDF links when possible, is full of dead ends and paywalls and offers no way to filter to full text. CloudSource OA never asks your patrons to log in order to access that full text. And finally, the search tools that Google offers are limited. Google's main search is designed for commerce and travel, while Google Scholar offers few filters and heavily weighs search results towards highly cited sources, even when they're much older and outdated. CloudSource offers robust filters and search tools along with a truly content-neutral relevancy ranking. If you want to take advantage of the growing body of OA that includes that 80% of OA that is in hybrid journals, the platform that best serves as a vehicle for that purpose is clear, and it's not Google or Google Scholar. So let's do another quick poll question as we get into the into our Q&A. Do you have any OA or OER initiatives at your institution right now? And you can select all that apply here. That can include textbook initiatives, any efforts to make OA more accessible to your patrons and your users, transformative agreements, or subscribe to open in order to help promote faculty in publishing and aid them on that side. Information literacy courses that pertain to OA and OER, I think, count here. Grant funding, maybe you don't have anything at all, or you're not sure, or there's something that's not listed here. And honestly, if it's something not listed here, reach out to me. I want to hear what you're doing after this when you get my contact information. So let's see where we're at here. All right. So open textbook initiatives doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, the cost of textbooks, I think my children are now in their mid-20s, but the last time I bought one, it was about $200 for a freshman biology textbook. It was ridiculous. Initiatives to make OA accessible, that's great. Transformative agreements doesn't surprise me for my academics at all. And I'd love to see more people focus a little bit on this, because I think it's a huge untapped source of great information for students. So those of you who answered no, hopefully you come out of this with some good questions and directions to look at. All right. So thank you for coming today. You can find my contact information here before we start answering questions. And this QR code will actually take you to our website where you can sign up for a deep dive webinar to kind of look at all the features I did not even begin to touch on today. So we do weekly deep dives on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Or we can even do a demo for you if you'd like to see it. So let's see what we've got in the Q&A. I think Sabrina is moderating for me here. So what have we got that has come through here?
Yeah, thanks so much, Mariska. We have a bunch of questions. I'll just remind our viewers, if you haven't submitted a question yet, feel free to do so. Also, you can use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like. I'll probably be choosing the most popular ones, so feel free to use that little thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like our top question right now is from Jay, and you talked about AI briefly. But Jay asks, how do you see AI affecting open access in the future?
That is such a good question and such a big one. Since most of it's unfortunately affecting it negatively in a lot of ways right now, which is part of the reason why, we've seen a lot of within the library news world and information sphere, a lot of cases of entire papers being written by ChatGTP and all kinds of crazy things like that. So there's a lot of very negative uses, which makes allowing your patrons to use Google indiscriminately kind of more complicated, because a lot of if they're eking into publishers actual published and vetted sources occasionally and having to be redacted later, some of them are pretty good. So there's some definite negative things here. And then there's a lot of really good things. Like one of the things we're using AI for is in conjunction with like the Open Alex project to add more access points to metadata. So very often when you get OA sources, they're very thin on subject headings and things of that nature. So, a lot of good work can be done just to make things that we already know are vetted quality sources just more discoverable. So we're kind of going both ways with this, and the AI overview stuff is a really hilarious example of where this can go really, really poorly. But ultimately, I'd love to see it be something that just aids in discovery more than anything, because that is one of the hardest things to provide to your students and your faculty is really good discovery tools. That could be a whole presentation. Maybe I'll do a webinar on that at some point in the future.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Okay, great. We have another question here. This might be conjecture, but Katie asks, do you think the recent ruling that Google has violated antitrust laws will have an impact on its statistics?
Oh gosh. um, Honestly, I hope so, because I think there's part of the problem that you see so often when we're looking at legislating something as vast as the internet is I don't know if our legislators understand what's happening. Sometimes I just want a librarian in the room to sit down and go, okay, this is what this means. Here's the impact. But a lot of times you find that Google in particular kind of because they're on the cutting edge of a lot of these things that there's not a whole lot of really good oversight. So I am happy to see where this goes because I really do think that a lot of people know how to really take advantage of Google and how it works and how it presents information to do a lot of damage for our casual researchers out there. So I do hope so. I saw there was one question here about uh, relevancy ranking toward the top there. Am I missing that one here? That looked interesting here about relevancy being kind of a vague term. I love to throw this out here because I think Google is it's very much a black box on how they rank things. That first article they put out in 1999 was like so detailed explaining their algorithms. And I will tell you one thing that the CloudSource team is made up of a lot of librarians. You'd be surprised how many of us work on this team. And one of the things that we're constantly looking at on our end, and I consult with our product manager, Katie Glazer, who is another academic librarian that I've worked with myself. Actually, we were in a library together about 15 years ago. But a lot of what we're constantly looking at is testing our algorithms to make sure that they make sense, that what you expect to see come up when you're doing a search makes sense. So we actually just recently, earlier this year, did some tweaking with like how much weight should a keyword that appears in the title versus an abstract versus full text. So one of the things you're getting when you're dealing with a company that employs a lot of librarians and is really trying to make a product specifically for libraries is that we're constantly looking at those rankings, at how we decide what appears on a list, what comes to the top, and tweaking when necessary. And we have a really active and wonderful group of customers that we work with pretty often. It's called a strategic partner program. It's, we have a base camp and they will give us feedback and they will tell us when things don't make sense and we will have meetings that will talk it through. So it's a very much a conversation as to decide what relevancy really means, what should be pushed to the top. So that's one of my favorite things about working here, actually, getting to work with those librarians. Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see. Another top question is from Melissa, who says, I'm confused. I thought OA articles were always free. How can an article be OA, but you have to subscribe or pay?
That is such a good question. And uh, the easy answer is yes, they're free. The hard answer is that they, especially when it comes to a lot of discovery providers, CloudSource doesn't sell subscriptions to journals or databases, but a lot of them do. And it really disincentivizes many of them to make the hybrid portion of those journals. So for Nature, for example, is something like 56% hybrid at this point, where it's about 56% OA. Don't quote me on that because I may be off by a percentage point or so. But it's also a really, expensive subscription. It disincentivizes them to make that OA portion available through your search engine. So if you're going into, you know, Primo or EDS or anything of that nature, if you don't subscribe to the whole journal, you're not getting that open access section, because that would really undermine their entire business model. I don't envy them having to figure that out at this point, since more and more and more of it's OA. So when you're searching on the internet, which ends up being what people do when they're trying to find these OA articles, if you don't know the author, the title, the issue, and you can go straight to it, you're visiting sometimes dozens and dozens of websites individually to go find the OA holdings for that journal and search through them and see if what you're looking for is there. And so there's really a void, which is part of the reason CloudSource came to be. There's a void in searching all of that non-gold and diamond journal content, because it's there, it's free, it's not easy to find. And if it's hard for librarians, and I've had days where I've logged into a site and gone, I know there's an article here that I'm looking for, and it's taking me 10 minutes, our patrons aren't doing it because it's just too complicated for them. So we try to make that a lot easier.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, another top question is from Rebecca, who asks, do you know why OA journals wouldn't be included in the DOAJ? There's just
No,
like
it's okay. The Directory of Open Access Journals only includes gold and diamond. So those are journals that are 100% OA. Those are the only ones they include, which it tends to be about 16%. And that's, kind of held steady for a few years now. And everything else is in, your bronze, your green, your hybrid. They're just kind of scattered throughout other journal sources. So what we often, tell people is, like, if it's indexed and cross-ref, we're going to have it. If it's OA and indexed and cross-ref, and then we do a lot of curation, a lot of working with publishers directly to pull in their OA content as well. But yeah, DOAJ is just a tiny percentage, only those fully open.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Gabriel asks, do you know about any copyrights issues with the PDFs available through Google Scholar? You mentioned the PDFs.
Yeah, that is, unfortunately, it's, again, because it's less curated. Google Scholar does make an effort to try and include scholarly sources in particular, but I know there are things that leak through. I don't know any particular stats on it. I'm sorry. Now I'm suddenly very curious to go down one of those rabbit holes and find out what their limitations are. But there's no real way to guarantee. If you go to a publisher site and that's where it takes you, you can be pretty safe. But I have definitely seen things come up from somewhat sketchy sources out there as well. So I think that's a very valid concern.
Great. I think we have time for a few more. Let's see. Jean asks, how is CloudSource unfiltering to GRYLIT, which I think means like non-traditional?
Yeah. Right now we filter to color journals whenever that's available. And part of the reason we work so hard to try and do enhancing on the metadata is because sometimes we're provided that information when we are indexing sources, and sometimes we're not. So whenever possible, if we know this is green, this is gray, this is from a repository, this is, we will limit to that. So for the time being, we've really tried to be very deliberate about anything that we're curating that is not in Crossref, or because sometimes when it comes to the GRYLIT, you're not quite sure what you're getting. But we also have a lot of tools in the background that I didn't get to show you, where if we're bringing in, for example, preprint resources that are coming from a repository and haven't actually, it's not the published version of it, we have the option for our librarians and administrators of that system to filter those out if they don't want them. So if they're kind of, of the position of, we only want things that are actually published in an academic journal, we don't want anything preprint, you can turn those off, you can turn off data sets. So we try and give you a lot of control over that, because we definitely recognize the fact that some of that GRYLIT can be amazing, and some of it can be a little bit less reliable and scholarly than other things. So we try and let you have the tools to manage it if you wish to.
Got it. Okay. Another question here was, how is CloudSource OA with predatory journals?
We, again, because we hire, we curate our resources. We're very on top of as much as possible, retractions. We're actually really hoping, one of my pet projects right now that I would really like to do as part of kind of the partnerships part of my job is to bring in some more transparent tools that will, flag potentially things that maybe that there hasn't been retractions, but there may be some questionable material in there, because right now we do a lot of that through just keeping on top of the retraction notices with the kind of sources we're pulling from. We're updating everything constantly. So if there is something that is potentially problematic and a retraction comes through, we're pulling it right away. So we try to be really on top of that, but I would love to see more in that vein, honestly. And right now, one of the things that we have in testing as far as a feature that we haven't released yet, we're beta testing it, so it should come out soon, is the option for our librarians and our patrons and users to be able to report anything that they see within the platform in the results set. So it'll be an option to report something as either broken or something suspicious going on with it, whatever the case may be, or if it's listed as OA, but it's not actually OA. And part of the reason we're doing that is we know e-resource librarians are really overwhelmed. And if you're getting a vague email from a patron that says, oh, this link didn't work, and you email them back and you say, which link? Can you tell me what you were looking up? And they don't actually know. And I've been in that position where I'm kind of going back and forth and I never figure out what it was that was broken. We're trying to eliminate that frustration a little bit. So if they do come across something that for whatever reason is suspect, they'll have a drop down. They'll be able to say what's wrong with it, and we can report it. It'll remove it from their search results from that session. And it comes to us instead of the librarians that are having to juggle a million things already. So we're trying to, design this product as we move forward with tools in mind to manage those kinds of things, because they are, a legitimate problem, and we don't want to have that fall on our customers. We would like to try and help them with that.
Awesome. Okay, I think we're at the end here, and I'll just point out if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, Mariska hopes to follow up with possible questions, and also your email is on the screen there. So
It is. And I will say, when you get the slides, I also have a page of references, because I am a librarian and I want you to be able to look at the kinds of material I was looking at while preparing this. So definitely take a look. There's some interesting studies in there.
great. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Mariska, for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording and where to access today's slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again in the near future on another session.
Thank you, everyone.